Hey, Patterson, how are you?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm good. We've got sunshine again, a bit cooler temperatures, not too bad over here.
We had a real summer day yesterday and it was brilliant. And this morning it was 10 degrees. So we're getting, you know,
That's the pleasure of living by the coast. You
yeah.
get the good days and then the wind can just change and it can be very different. We get that here.
Yeah. Where you like me, when it comes from the South Pole's the thing it's coming from. So uh,
Absolutely. And you're a bit closer than we are. So,
they open the fridge door. It's like, you know,
so
uh,
what did you want to talk about today? What's the hot topic?
well, I was thinking about that, and I've done another 10 hours of listening to podcasts by people that I know and respect this week, and coming back over the fundamentals. And we talked about lifestyle medicine and its six pillars, but what's that actually mean to people that are listening to this? What actually is the traction that they can get out of it? And let me give you an example of just how powerful this is. I had a new patient this week, and unfortunately, a young person with bowel cancer, and I mean under the age of 30.
Whoa.
And that person is also a type 1 diabetic, which is very, very tough. So, uh, uh, this type 1 diabetes has been controlled, of course, but as we know about cancer and diabetes, it's a 500% increase in your potential to get cancer when you have diabetes.
Wow.
So, blood sugar is not what you want to have a problem with when you have cancer. And so before she came in, she started reading some of our material and immediately kind of started drifting towards her meat-centric farming type diet into a plant-based diet almost exclusively. And she said, it's the first time in so many years that I've had fruit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as she was making this shift, of course, she's the expert on controlling her own insulin, her own medication, and has a continuous glucose monitor, so she can be quite accurate as to what food is doing to her. And so the first time in her diabetic life, since being a young teenager, she cut her medication almost exactly in half.
Wow. That's amazing.
And yeah, and that's just before we actually began our investigation and recommendations.
So
So
just before you go on, that's a bit of a misnomer about fruit being spiking the sugar, isn't it? Have I got that right?
it is, and fruit can spike sugar, but when you are eating it in the company of other fresh vegetables and savory foods and things of that nature, it actually lowers. It can blunt that spike curve. And so in this particular case, of course, she varied her diet enough well, like I say, she needs almost half the insulin that she did previously.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive.
And the thing about insulin is that when you give insulin as a medication, it's a blunt instrument, and you continually have to give more and more and more and more insulin as the patient ages over the decades because they become insulin resistant. And so what we've done with this just dietary shift is drop that insulin resistance. So she's more sensitive to insulin, and therefore she needs less. Now, the other things that uh, reduce our need for insulin is controlling cortisol, the stress hormone. And the stress hormone is absolutely, it opens your eyes in the morning, it gets you out of bed, and it raises your pulse rate and it raises your blood pressure. And you're looking for ears in the grass. It can go into hyper states, okay, and get you very excited and produce adrenaline and get you, pick the car up off the child kind of strength, you know. And so there's this miraculous little thing. It happens, but chronic long-term hypercortisolemia is a real problem because it increases blood sugar to get the muscles to do the job that they're hypervigilant or they have anxiety about, mental anxiety.
So it's anxiety or stress triggers cortisol in response,
Yeah,
and then the rising of the cortisol triggers a dump of insulin. Is that the way it works?
yeah, a dump of sugar,
A
and
dump of sugar, okay, into the bloodstream.
sugar, and then
Ah,
the break those metabolites have to be that energy fuel has to be shunted away, and so it doesn't throw you into a coma. Okay,
so it's
basically, you get
stress, cortisol, sugar gets released in the bloodstream, then insulin gets released to manage the sugar in the bloodstream.
exactly. So
And if
insulin's your
that's
storage,
left on,
get it out, put it in the muscle, put it in the liver first, put it in the muscle second, then take the sugar and turn it into fat and store it.
and that's where we get
Yeah, because
fat.
remember, this is an interesting thing, and people don't think about it, particularly doctors. You've only got a couple thousand calories of sugar available to you in your body. A couple thousand calories. Now,
There's that glycogen in the muscles
yeah,
primarily.
glycogen in the liver and in the muscle.
Okay.
And so that's our marathon, and if we're doing the 5 minute marathon per mile, we're going to burn those 2,000 calories just about by mile 18. Okay, and then we hit the wall because we have to flip completely to fat and ketosis basically. And I mean, it doesn't happen like, oops, there it is, but it's like in swimming, when we're swimming distance, we call it the baby grand piano. They put it on your back. It's like, all of a sudden your butt goes down and you're swimming uphill. It's like this is an area where your body has to convert into gluconeogenesis, in other words, making sugar out of something else, either fat or protein in worst cases. It'll catabolize your, an end stage in cancer is muscle loss, is cachexia, because the body's turning muscle into sugar to feed the tumors. Okay, so this is a very important, one of the most important things about controlling lifestyle is controlling sugar intake, is controlling insulin sensitivity, is controlling that mechanism. Otherwise, we get fatty liver, fatty pancreas, high insulin, insulin resistance, and 60% of our country and your country's population is in the diabetic or pre-diabetic range. Maybe 10 to 20% are actually know they have it, and the other 30, 40% don't know they have it and they're walking around. And this is where lifestyle medicine is actually uh, making inroads, because we now have a credentialing for doctors like myself to be credentialed in diabetes reversal. And how do we
It
do
wasn't
that?
a thing. Most people wouldn't even know that's a thing.
No, they wouldn't, and particularly their doctors, because
Well, that's even worse.
they've only been trained and expertly trained by the pharmacy companies to identify diabetes and know how to handle the handful of medications that they need to use to control these people. And there are serious things that happen with diabetes: liver damage, kidney damage, peripheral vascular, ocular damage. Uh, you know, Neurological damage, the things that we see in the aging diabetic, oh, there's a loss of sensitivity in the fingers. Well, it's neurological damage created by the sugar on the nerves. And then, then it's also in the peripheral blood vessels. And then there's lack of circulation, and they chop a toe off, and they chop another toe off, and another toe off, and they chop the leg off, and then they die of sepsis or some other complication.
But
These
they
are
also die 5 to 10 years earlier.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no way of knowing. If you would have known 20 years before you got into that situation, as all you had to do was change your diet and start exercising and take your lifestyle seriously, would you do it?
Sorry, I actually laughed at that, and I think that's an interesting response because it sounds so stupid, doesn't it? But it's the misinformation that actually has us not even be open to that I could reverse my diabetes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of the first bit. If you don't know it's possible, you're not asking any questions or you're not exploring it. And then
Right.
you know it's possible, well, then you can do something about it.
Yeah. Now, this young patient that we're talking about, technically, stage 4 cancer,
Wow.
and that's basically palliative care. You do what you can, you do a little surgery, you take away the bulk of the mass, you give some chemotherapy, whatever, but you just wait and watch and hope for the best because you've really got nothing to offer. We, on the other hand, have seen now by handshaking this, taking control of the sugar situation, the blood sugar. And remember also, there's this thing called hyperpalatable foods, right? And hyperpalatable foods are the foods that we just can't get enough of. And they're what industry have seen that we really like to take off the shelves. They're the things that are at your height all around, all around the grocery store. So you can easily reach them. You don't even have to exert yourself and bend over. It's like, why is rice always on the floor? Okay. You ever think about that?
Oh
That
no, I've actually worked like so. I used to be an architect, and I did spend a little bit of time working for a company in store design. And those sort of things come up. They deliberately create a path so that you can get deep into the store. This was a department store. You could get really easy path straight into the store, and then it's hard to get back out.
yeah.
You know,
Yes.
all those sorts of things. And the supermarkets play it like a casino.
Oh,
They design every little piece to keep you in there.
it's like an airport, and you've got to go through duty free for
Yes.
for 6 blocks before you get out.
Yeah.
And those are all the things assaulting you. And so this hyperpalatability of food, we think sugar, salt, and fat, but sugar, salt, fat, and flavorings, science that has added chemicals that make your brain go off like it's on cocaine. Okay. And so that's the Dorito effect that we talk about. But in general, hyperpalatable foods are not starches and sugars, they're 60% fat.
Uh-huh.
We reach for that fat. A beef burger at one of our restaurants like McDonald's or Burger King is 60% fat. Okay. And that's just what we want to do this. When you have that caramel latte down at Starbucks, double shot with vanilla or whatever, it's like, no, it's getting up in the really high fat things. There's like 500-600 calories. So it's like these things, this fat also stimulates insulin because fat, why would it? Fat, you can't burn it as energy immediately. Oh, why not? It's got to be broken down into fatty acids. Well, how does that happen? Metabolically inside your body. So when you absorb it in these fat globules, they get put into storage and taken out as triglycerides. And so it's like these long chain fats, saturated fat, palmitic, whatever, 14, 16, 18 carbons long, they get broken down into two uh, or three carbons, triglycerides, okay, and used that way as energy. And it's very efficient, it's fine. But in order to do that, you have to store it. What's the storage molecule?
Sure.
Insulin. That's right.
Oh, insulin. Okay.
Yeah, so now we have a double vector between sugar and fat provoking insulin to go up. Uh, the the interesting thing is that tribe in Africa that the carnivores hold up as being these are our people, this is how we're supposed to eat. That tribe uh, is impressive. They've got a BMI of about 17 or 18, no body fat. They look really good, and they go out and these men hunt and they get these beasts and they put them on their back and they bring them back to the tribe, and everybody jumps up and down and they all hunk into it. Well, this doctor is an anthropologist, went there and actually lived with the tribe and said, well, what actually do they eat? And when he broke it down, he found that they eat a Mediterranean diet, 70% starch, carbohydrates, 15% fat, 15% protein, because the men only get the meat every once or twice 3 or 4 times a month, and they all average about 200 to 400 grams a week at most.
Mm.
But their primary thing is the women out there every day digging the roots and getting these big tubers like potatoes. And their starchy intake is absolutely the steady state that they have. That, a little fruit, a little this, a little that.
Uh,
Their sustenance comes from these things. So all of a sudden you realize that A, they've only got 15% fat. B, there's no sugar in their diet. C, the animal fats that they're getting are wild. All right. So they're not 60% marbled fat in their thing. They're more like 12, 15%. Actually, no, a wild antelope, I think, is like 4% fat, lean muscle, something like that. I don't know exactly, but I remember it was really, really extremely low. And so when they're eating these ways, and they eat tail to nose too, they don't waste anything. They get a little bump up with that, but in general, they're primarily plant-based diet. And the
that's
carnivores say,
primarily the carbs gives them a foundation or a platform. And
it's
because that
their
platform's big
major
enough,
energy
sugar
source.
spikes don't make a lot of difference on it.
They
But
don't have,
without that platform, those sugar spikes would actually be more significant.
well, they in their dietary world, and it's a great example, the carnivores are right. This is how we ate. Okay. They just didn't look at what actually they ate. Uh, but what the beautiful thing is when they look at that, they say, well, there is no place to get a sugar spike.
uh,
Okay. Unless they overeat a little bit, then they store it.
mm.
And, women put it on their butt and their hips a little bit, and men around their intra-abdominal organs a little bit. But they don't, these guys are low BMIs. So they primarily live on starch and low-fat diet. Now, remember, our diets are 40% fat now.
That's high.
Oh yeah, a 35 to 45 is the thing. So it depends on your ethnicity and what your habits are. You're going to get minimum 35% fat in your diet.
That's 2 to 3 times more than what these people in Africa were eating.
Yeah. And oddly enough, when we do scientific experiments on low fat diets, the definition of a low fat diet is less than 30%. You
Mhm.
know, and when they get people that actually do eat a 20% fat diet, they get miraculous results and all kinds of things. But it's hard to do that. They have to box it up and send it to them and make them eat out of the box to control their dietary intake because our commercial foods available just don't do it. Now, I've had today, a little off topic, I've had my 2 meals so far. So for breakfast, I had my soaked oats and some fruit. No fat in there. Oh yeah, but yes, there was because I had some hazelnuts in there and some pumpkin seed. So I probably had at least 5% fat in the overall calories of that dish, which is a big bowl. It was lovely. And for lunch, I've had a salad, a big salad. And it was spinach and cabbage and carrot, capsicum, tomato, chickpeas, a can of chickpeas, um, a cup of rice, black rice, cold from leftover, black rice, um, a handful of raisins in there, and
No oil.
no oil, balsamic vinegar, uh, and apple cider vinegar, and mixed up. Lovely. And so I've had no fat today,
Mm.
to speak of other than from nuts. I've had no sugar, and I feel great. Okay, and I did an hour Pilates class this morning, and just after my bowl of porridge, didn't notice it. It was great. So my point being is that it's normal, just like our African friends, not to spike blood sugar.
Mm.
And when we don't spike blood sugar, we have wonderful benefits. We burn energy naturally. So tonight I'll have dinner and it'll be, I don't know what I'm having for dinner tonight, but it'll be in the same vein with low fat. My protein intake's probably about 18% today. Um, that that can of chickpeas was probably 15 grams of protein just in that. So that's almost over close to a half of my daily needs, of about 45, 48 grams of protein per day. So that's so when we take people like this patient who had a serious issue and we bring down these things into our genomic range of normal, we can affect all these things that make the body a hospitable place for disease, making it inhospitable. Now that's just diet. You put exercise on this, and exercise, what's it do? It lowers insulin. Because it lowers blood sugar, and by that it lowers storage molecules of fat if you go far enough. And when you're doing stage 2 or zone 2 training, like walking at a moderate pace, where you can talk easily, but you're not gonna sing. Your pulse rate's up a little bit there, and you have to work at it. When you're in that zone, your body actually, your muscles burn fat, and they preserve sugar because you need the sugar to run away from those ears in the grass. Okay. But the long-term slow burn of the slow twitch fibers is fed by the lovely fat stores in your ketosis. So that makes it an unnatural event, particularly if you're overweight, because it's hard to get that fat mobilized.
So how quickly does this happen? So the patient you were talking about, how quick has this shift happened from going from one diet to the other?
She did it on her own in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And now, as we start this program, and she has to go through surgery and whatever else comes next, she will have a base that's, 50, 80% better than she had before. And she's going to have nutrient in her diet that may be 80, 90% more nutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, polysterols, polyphenols, that she didn't get before on her previous diet. And, oh, by the way, yes, she has fiber in her diet, which is, brilliant because now it feeds her biome to help get her commensal armory working for her. Let's look at it this way. And this is one of the things that people don't realize. And I as I think about it, it's horrific in one way. Our brain is so much material, and 2 to 3 kilos of brain, right? Now, what happens is that we have more of this brain-like material, nerves inundating our digestive tract than we do actually have brain.
Yep, that makes sense. So it's the brain itself is a small mass, but it's the nervous system that comes off it that does all the work, particularly coming down into the gut.
Into the gut, and the gut has this, we talk about the gut-brain barrier, but what actually is that? They're going to go in and cut out a portion of this person's brain because it's got cancer in it, okay? Her gut brain.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder what's the effect of that. And I think that the effect is that this is such a miraculous organism that the body's going to compensate, regrow those nerve endings, and communicate again in a holistic way to have that gut function perfectly. And the surgeon looks brilliant, but it's actually the body. Okay. It's actually the body doing that. And to me, that's just miraculous. I had another patient with a with a cancer on the outside of their digestive tract that was very, very rare. And this patient was thin when he first came in. And they said, look, this is a very rare cancer. It's very aggressive. We're not going to have, get your affairs in order. He was in his early 50s and teenage daughter. And so we put him on the only program we could, which is a whole foods plant-based diet. And we put him on an exercise program. And we put him on a meditation program. And we enforced upon him the sleep hygiene. And we talked to him about the stress he was under at work and how he had to dial all that back and just look after himself. And we realized that, because of his wife's work situation and his daughter, that they had to restructure how they worked together as a team during this difficult thing. They did that. He didn't fast because he couldn't. We did time restricted feeding where he didn't eat for 14 hours a day. And he had to go through a surgery, went through another surgery, went through another surgery, went through another surgery. 6 surgeries later, he's got a much shorter digestive tract. They kept having to chop pieces out. But the interesting thing is that he's fine. He's doing his 400 to 500 minutes in the hills every week, riding his bike, having a blast. He went back to work. He's working full time. He's never been stronger. He's in his 60s now. It's been 10 years.
Wow, fantastic. Great result.
And this is what we're talking about when we say lifestyle medicine. You got to handle the stress. You got to handle the environment. You got to handle the timing. And when we look back to our African friends, the tribe, they're not watching TV. Okay. They're not staying up till midnight like I do, and watching that. It gets dark and the fire goes low. It's like, they want to see sunrise the next day because that's a new day and a new opportunity to go hunt and to take care. So the men go off and do their thing, and the women go, we got to feed them because they're not going to get anything today.
They know from experience.
And so I think that, while there's scores of examples that I have, I can say that there's some miraculous things that happen. It's not miraculous. The body's made to heal. It's not made to put up with the high fat, low fiber, high protein, high flavor, high palatability crack that's out there posing as food that we're addicted to. And it's not our fault. It's not industry's fault. They just discovered how to sell more stuff. They would probably like to sell good stuff because their kids are eating the crap too. But they don't know how to market that. They don't know how to get people to do that. So it's up to us, and this is why we do these talks, is to chisel away at the common sense necessary and the courage that's necessary for people to have individually to say enough. My mother's 50 kilos overweight, or my brother, or and they have low self-esteem. They're not happy, and could it be it's not their doing? Yes, they're the ones sticking in their mouth, but it's like that's the same as it's like the number one cause of death for cardiologists is heart attack. It's like there's no control there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like bright people do dumb things when it comes to hormonal, emotional stimuli. And this is what these buttons are being pushed. So I want people that say, look, all you got to do is get away from it for 3 or 4 weeks and you lose the sugar cravings. A couple months, the fat cravings. When you bring up the fiber, what happens is that, oh, you're satiated. You're really not hungry anymore. And oh, because there's so much fiber, you're eating much less calories. So your weight tends to moderate. And the plant-based proteins are much less mutagenic, much almost completely non-carcinogenic compared to the animal meat, cheese, eggs, dairy, fish proteins. So there's so much added benefit to going this way. And till you get down to 2 or 3%, probably like under 5%, like our African tribe, where their calories come from the animals. They primarily they have very, very, very low, if any, cancer rates. No digestive cancers that I'm aware of, because they're eating those tubers out of the ground with eating 100 grams of fiber a day or more.
And they're probably not under stress either because their life's fairly simple. So that certainly helps. Plus, they're living in a community, so socially they're healthy as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. So anyway, I think that's a good message for the day to let people know that lifestyle is a dance. And that dance, while it can be orchestrated by a professional, the common sense comes from somebody saying, "Go, that makes a lot of sense. I think I better look into this." And so this is why these resources are becoming more available. I'm connected with groups all over the world. We have we have a members interest group in oncology. And there's close to 300 oncologists in that are saying, hey, this lifestyle stuff is a great adjunct to our practice. Matter of fact, it makes a lot of sense. The cardiology group, there's over 500 in there, I think, and cardiologists, and they're going, this same thing. This makes a lot of sense, and it really helps us do a better job as cardiologists. And likewise in family practice and obesity medicine and all of these things. And oh, what about behavioral medicine and psychiatry and psychology? Oh yeah, it helps there too. There's the study that was recently done showed that people who are depressed have twice the blood spikes in the blood sugar spikes as people who are not depressed. So again, there's this volatility to the environmental influences that gives us a predisposition towards, it could be depression for one person or autoimmune disease for another, like vitiligo or rosacea or something that would be untoward in an inflammatory disorder or Crohn's disease, it's something, rheumatoid arthritis, all of these things, thyroiditis, all of these things are part and parcel downstream failures. And it's just a matter of right place, wrong time, or family predisposition or environmental predisposition.
Yeah, I heard a good one way that I can summarize that for myself was that I heard a really good example of good leadership. And the guy said, it's not about me telling people what to do. It's about me setting up the conditions for them to flourish. And I thought that sort of parallels what we're talking about here, setting up the good conditions for our bodies to flourish, both internally, but also mentally and the other parts of it, socially, emotionally, all those bits.
Exactly. And this is where lifestyle medicine, the medicine, the healthcare that I practiced my whole life has its advantages because we're not about a better medicine. We're about behavior, a better behavior in your environment so that your need for medicine is less or not at all. And because we found that to be the biggest stick to beat the beast down. And you just have to look at long-lived, healthy populations around the earth. They come back to the blue zones, right? The blue zones are those areas where people live exceptionally long lives with very little disease. And they're all primarily plant-based. They have a little bit of fish but mostly they live on potatoes in Okinawa. They have a little bit of this or that in Greece, a little bit of cheese, but it mostly comes from goats, not cows. They get Italy. And then there's Pasadena, California,
Oh, really?
with the Seventh Day Adventists, with their population of 10,000 or more people living in the same community just outside of Glendale. And the longest lived population on Earth.
Oh, really?
And what I call the armpit of Los Angeles. I mean,
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
expect
went
it.
to, I went to university there, and it was like, good, it was like terrible air. Now the air's cleaned up a bit, but uh, they're in the foothills and they're thriving. You got 100-year-old taxi Uber drivers, and they're looking after themselves. They're pious, primarily vegetarian, vegans in their group, and they've been studying these people for 30 years. The vegans in the group are on top of the health statistics. They have the lowest BMI and the longest lived with the least amount of problems. And then they have, of course, they have vegetarians, then they have Mediterranean, then they have regular diet people with very limited meat intake, and they have they just but their stats go like that, and the average stats are off the chart on the bottom because of where they're at. So really interesting stuff. But my point is that we don't have to we don't have to go to medical school to look at saying, well, I want to do what the old people do. I want to eat local, have good friends, go to bed on early, and laugh a lot.
Doesn't sound that attractive when you're 20 years old, but and bulletproof supposedly, but depends what you want, I guess. You want the long, happy life or the healthy life,
Hmm.
both.
And as we can see by my examples, the bell curve is being shifted, and the bell curve isn't a bell anymore. It's more like a soft boiled egg. It's just flattening because there's so much under the curve now for age. The diseases are coming to a younger and younger and younger cohort, and that's sad. That's very sad. Mm.
Well, great talking to you again, Patterson. I love the story and the case study of that patient, and I hope she does well. I hope she comes out the other side better than she was. Sounds like she's on the right track.
Well, thank you. And I think that the job of a physician is never extinguish hope, but know that hope is not the treatment.
Yeah.
And this is a profound thing. Hope is not a treatment. Hope is a necessary component of our message, and but it's actions, it's behavior in those actions that give us the potential to awaken our results, our genes, our epigenetics, and our consciousness to do better. All right, so we'll leave it at that. And Geoff, a pleasure as always. And if of course, if any of our listeners have questions, they can just send them in to the website and say, hey, if any of our subscribers have it, they know how to get in touch with us, get those questions to us. And I think that for those of you joining us from YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe to our flourishing channel because as one of our my good people out there has Chris McCaskill has told us, he said, we who are the clinical sciences and not really the high-powered multimedia giants rarely get our message out there. And like the number one book on diet is the carnivore one right now for reversing diabetes or something like that. And the number two is written by an actual person who's done the research and reversed diabetes for 20 years. But nobody, yeah, but he's I think he's 10 to 1 undersold to the other guy because the other guy's probably has about a $2 billion company behind him that's supporting him. but that's another topic. We'll
Maybe
go.
for next week.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that, and you have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, look forward to it. Bye,
Oh,
Patterson.
wait for our Christmas special coming up because we're going to talk
Oh,
about how to get through the holidays without gaining weight, losing marbles, and coming out stronger, fitter, faster.
and having fun along the way.
Oh, laughing the whole way along. Yeah. If not at
Cool,
me,
cool,
at
cool,
yourself.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.